Good evening and welcome to The Report. I'm Jonathan Steele. Catherine Samba-Panza, the interim president of the Central African Republic, has appointed a Muslim leader, Mahamat Kamoun, as prime minister in a bid to quell a recent upsurge in violence. The Seleka forces, most of whom are also Muslim, rejected her move. Sarah Say reports on the situation.
The interim president, Catherine Samba-Panza, has named Mahamat Kamoun as the Central African Republic's first Muslim prime minister. The appointment of Kamoun was announced on state radio on Sunday, days after his predecessor stepped down as part of a government reshuffle to create a more inclusive government. So who is Mahamat Kamoun? He's an economist and was the cabinet chief for Seleka leader Michel Djotodia during his presidency. He's not a member of Seleka, according to the group, and has also served as an advisor to Samba-Panza since Djotodia's resignation last year. As fierce clashes shatter any calm that has existed over the last month, Kamoun has been tasked with forming a consensus government. But the Seleka have said they will not take part in any national unity government and say they have not been consulted about the choice of prime minister. The group have threatened to rethink last month's ceasefire deal. In a statement, Seleka's second vice president, General Mohamed Moussa Defane, said, "Seleka has decided not to participate in the next government. The transitional head of state did not think to open talks with Seleka and just decided to name a prime minister." An anti-Balaka spokesperson said they were happy with Kamoun's nomination and would take part in a unity government. Seleka forces were disarmed last year by international forces as the anti-Balaka stepped up their attacks. The anti-Balaka have killed more than 2,000 Muslims and displaced over 1 million others in what Amnesty International have called ethno-religious genocide. Anti-Balaka came about as a result of violence perpetrated by the Seleka forces. Speaking on state radio, Kamoun has said that he will name a cabinet of about 26 members. His members will focus on re-establishing security, improving the humanitarian situation and organising elections. But with the warring factions at odds over whether or not they recognise the new Prime Minister, Kamoun will certainly have a tough job ahead of him. Sarah Say, The Report, Islam Channel.
Well, I'm joined now in the studio by James Schneider from Think Africa Press. Welcome to the programme. Why do you think the Seleka rebels are making such a big thing about not being consulted? I mean, is that an excuse or was that a real mistake? Should they have been consulted?
I think it was both, but it's also, we have to bear in mind that it's difficult to consult all the different elements of Seleka, because whilst they have been claiming that they're a unified political force and they're very easy to talk to, they're not. It's patently not the case. They're different elements which speak for themselves, and that makes dealing with them difficult. But yes, they have. This person has been slightly foisted upon them, hoping that they would be okay with him because he acted as the cabinet chief for Michel Djotodia, the former leader of Seleka.
But I mean, the fact that he's a Muslim doesn't seem to account very much with Seleka. Well, should he now appoint some other Muslims as ministers and even some Seleka people as ministers?
Well, perhaps, but he was never going to be terribly popular with all of Seleka. I mean, whilst he was the cabinet chief for Djotodia, Djotodia fell out with most of Seleka in September of 2013 when he realised that they were causing him lots and lots of problems, and he tried to disband them, and all the different fighters went off, which is why you sometimes hear them referred to as ex-Seleka rather than Seleka. And in this period, towards the end of 2013, some Seleka fighters actually came and robbed Kamoun's house and ransacked it and stole his computer and things like that. So he was never going to be this kind of necessary popular choice, even though he is from a part of the country which Seleka rebels do currently control. As for the kind of shape of his government, he'll put in some other people, some maybe Seleka-aligned people, some other Muslims. But we have to remember what this government is. Whilst we can hope that it will be able to achieve certain things, it's really just a placeholder government that's charged with trying to get elections together. Nobody really who's involved in this process, either at the AU level or at the regional level or the international partners like France and the UN, have any real interest with giving Seleka any long-lasting power, because they are, essentially warlords. They don't want to give them any power. So this is an attempt to sort of bring them in, keep things relatively calm over a period before they can organise more elections.
But what's sort of the Seleka rebels' attitude to elections? Do they say there'll be a farce? Will they take part?
I mean, we don't know precisely yet, because the elections, although they're first meant to be in February of next year, they're still rather a long way off. They haven't been organised at all. There needs to be an electoral roll and all the rest of that. I don't imagine the Seleka would particularly play ball with the elections when they come, but then we don't know what state the Seleka will be in. It's quite possible that it's constituent parts, because we have to remember Seleka is an alliance of different rebel factions, which previously had been, some of them had been at odds with each other, which came together under Michel Djotodia to overthrow the former president, François Bozize. So we don't know what state the Seleka will be in, whether some of them will be signing, some of them won't. I mean, in your package we heard from Defane, the second vice president. He was the representative who was in Brazzaville, who signed supposedly on behalf of the Seleka, but that wasn't acknowledged by other senior members of the Seleka. So it's not a unified force, so we can't say what they as a whole will be doing. It's not as if there's a unified Muslim rebel group that has legitimate grievances that's trying to get into the political process. We've got a variety of rebel commanders who control different bits of territory, who have some overarching similarities, some links. They're all called Seleka. Most of them are Muslim, but they're not as united as you might think.
But I mean, if they're not going to be accepting the elections, it's all a bit of a farce, isn't it, to have a sort of government and elections if the men with the power and the men with the guns, most of them are not going to play ball?
Well, I mean, to begin with, they don't control all of the country. They control parts of the country. They don't control the most populous areas of the country. So, I mean, that doesn't necessarily make elections pointless. I mean, I personally think that the rush towards elections is bonkers. I don't think it's going to achieve anything. I think it is a way for the international community to scale down its already insufficient engagement with the country, because you can say, right, we now have a legitimate government, job done, we can leave. I mean, it's not just the Seleka, though, that are going to be problematic for when there is a supposedly legitimate government. They still have to deal with the anti-Balaka, which again are not a unified militia, who are very violent, and they need to be disarmed. They have to deal with the overarching hunger within the country, and also the fact that the political class is completely, they have no legitimacy anyway. That's the root cause of the problem. And it is noteworthy that whilst Kamoun they're trying to sort of dress him up as he's this Muslim prime minister, this is a very sort of positive, inclusive act. We have to remember he was a senior figure in the treasury under Bozize, the president that the Seleka overthrew, and he was there for many years, and he's sort of dogged by allegations of corruption. So it's not as if he's necessarily some breath of fresh air.
But you say that the international community has not done enough. On the other hand, they are bringing in more troops in September, I think, aren't they? So they are escalating. They're not pulling out.
No, they're not. They're not pulling out yet, and the UN force of sort of 12,000 or so troops is very welcome, and it will bring policing capacity and ability to run prisons and help paying salaries, and it will be useful. But this is September 2014. This crisis has been ongoing for really rather a long time, and the international community has been very slow to move, and also for humanitarian funding, which has been massively behind schedule in what has been pledged, and what has been pledged has been woefully insufficient. So whilst there is some engagement, yes, and that engagement is about to increase, I mean, it's too little to what it should have been, and it's certainly been too late.
But can foreign troops, even if they're African as opposed to European, really deal with the problem? Don't they just create a sense that the country's being occupied and recruit more people to the rebel cause?
Well, they haven't thus far. I mean, there have been problems. There have been problems with the Chadian troops, where there have been allegations that they've been siding with the Seleka, which was perhaps driving some people to the anti-Balaka side. That's troubling. But in the round, the troops have done things like secure humanitarian corridors, secure a road pass so that aid could get in from Cameroon rather than having to be flown in, which is much more difficult and more costly. And they've been able to protect civilians in the places where they can. I mean, it's not a case of there is a widespread popular support for one movement which is being attacked by foreign troops. I mean, they are the troops from abroad, whether they're from Africa or elsewhere, can help keep sides apart and bring peace. And there isn't this kind of groundswell of, right, well, we don't want the French or the Burundians here, so we're going to go join a militia.
Well, we're going to go for our first break of the evening. Thank you very much, James Schneider, for being with us. But do join us after that when we'll be looking at the rest of the day's news.